Just as the church in Rome collected Bible texts, so too did the church in Antioch. And from that time, we have two main groups of scripture: Textus Receptus from Antioch, and Sinaiticus and Vaticanus from Alexandria. It was Lucian, who lived from 250 to 312 AD, who translated the Bible in Antioch. He was called a Judaist by the other Christians who didn't accept the Judeo-Christian mentality, despite Christ saying that Judeo-Christian mentality would represent the gospel. Champlain and Lincoln said in their book Messianic Legacy that in the year 318 AD, 8 Nazarene Jews, that is Christian Jews, met with Pope Sylvester in Rome, and it was their opinion that they, and not the Bishop of Rome, should decide who should be bishop over Jerusalem, Antioch, Ephesus and Alexandria. But the Pope refused to withdraw his nomination. They were unceremoniously dismissed and told that the bishop in Rome was now the head of the church. It has been said that this is the last communication between the Christian Nazarenes and with both the papacy and the Orthodox churches. As the church in Rome gained more power, this new type of Christianity began to compromise her theological borders. In the 4th century, the church Christianized pagan tradition, which included temples for the saints, pagan festivals, processions, offerings of prayer and incense, blessing and dedication of land and property. At the end of the 4th century, it was taught that the priest received a special permanent holiness through his ordination, and they became thought of as a medium for the grace of God. Augustine developed his thought of predestination and the teaching of original sin. The leaders of the church in Ephesus were among those who heard Paul's warning against false teachings.
Ephesus was the center for the church councils in 431 AD, and they wanted to condemn Nestorius. It was Cyril, who was a bishop from Alexandria, who was the main force behind condemning Nestorius and his followers. And he invited a church synod to meet here in Ephesus. And that was no coincidence, because here was the very city where Mary worship was now gaining immense popularity. Mary became a substitute for Artemis. We know that at this church meeting, Cyril attended with 60 bishops that he had summoned in order to condemn Nestorius. Nestorius also attended, and at that time he was Bishop of Constantinople. He had friends whom he requested to come and support him. They came from the east with their leader, John from Antioch. He brought 43 men with him, but unfortunately they arrived too late, and Cyril refused to wait for them in order to arrive. So he started the church council and voted in favor of condemning Nestorius. The emperor at that time was Theodosius, and the pope in Rome was at that time Celestine, who also hurried to the meeting, and their presence alone settled the issue with a powerful condemnation of Nestorius. So even if the other 43 men had arrived on time, it would have been to no avail now. Nestorius' teachings were first and foremost about the human and divine nature of Christ. By this, he set in stone his position that Mary was not the mother goddess, because he could see that the worship of Mary would increase and she would be worshipped as the mother of God. She wasn't his divine mother, she was his human mother. After Nestorius was condemned, he was dismissed from his position as Bishop of Constantinople and subsequently exiled to the desert in Fayum in Egypt, where he died 20 years later. We know that because of this church council, the worship of Mary was spread far and wide around the Byzantine and Roman world. It is most interesting to note that during the church council, women protesters from Ephesus gathered outside, calling for Mary to be elevated to the status of Mother Goddess. So Nestorius had much opposition from Ephesus.
There were many controversies in the Christian faith. One of them was regarding the Sabbath. The churches that the apostles started around the world kept the seventh-day Sabbath, but the churches in Rome and Alexandria changed the Sabbath because of their clear distinction they wanted to make between themselves and the Jews, because they wanted to compromise with the pagan festivals and the Christian holy days. This pagan Christianity gained more and more respect with the Romans. For although almost all churches throughout the world celebrate the sacred mysteries on the Sabbath of every week, yet the Christians of Alexandria and Rome, on account of some ancient tradition, have ceased to do this. God's foundation was removed and replaced by a pagan foundation. In early Christianity, the pillar of their faith was the Torah and the Old Testament. And the fulfillment of these scriptures was Jesus the Messiah. The later form of Christianity used the pagan religions as their pillar. And this pillar was not what the prophet said the Messiah would be. That was the ancient Roman pagan religion. And then they tried to make Christ the fulfillment of this. It was Constantine who would seal forever the falling away of the Christians and declare victory over them. He declared that the Christian God handed him the crown and the victory. But Constantine did not respect the teaching of Jesus. Not only did he murder several of his own family members, but he united church and state, and Christianity and paganism. His conversion was a victory for the church in Rome, but a tragedy for the Christians who maintained the Judeo-Christian faith. Constantine and his followers were to hand the Church of Rome ultimate power. For example, St. Peter's Basilica is built upon a sanctuary that Constantine built over what he claimed was Peter's grave. The Christians that kept the true faith fled Rome to the mountains of North Italy, close to the French border, and among them were the Waldenses.